It was a quiet evening when my phone rang. My daughter's name flashed on the screen. I smiled, thinking she just wanted to talk like old times. But her voice wasn't warm. It was rushed, almost cold. She said, "Mom, we're leaving tomorrow. Your beach house has been sold." For a moment, I couldn't speak. That house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was his laughter, my husband's dream, my daughter's childhood, and my only peace. But instead of breaking down, I smiled. Because she didn't know, I had already written a chapter of my own. She thought she sold my home, but what she really sold was her trust. I raised my daughter alone after her father passed away. Back then, I didn't have much. Just a small house by the beach, a few old photographs, and a heart full of dreams for her. Every corner of that house carried a memory. The kitchen where we laughed while baking birthday cakes. The garden where her father planted roses before he fell ill. The living room where we'd fall asleep watching the waves through the open windows. It wasn't a mansion, but it was home. When her father died, I promised myself I'd give her the life he wanted for her. I worked day and night stitching clothes, cleaning homes, saving every penny. And when I finally paid off the loan, I remember standing in the middle of that empty house, crying. Not because I was sad, but because we made it.
She and I.
Just us. As she grew older, I saw less of the little girl who used to run barefoot through the sand, calling me mama. College changed her. City life changed her. Slowly, her voice became shorter, her calls less frequent. And when she did visit, it was never about me anymore. It was always about money, plans, or things she thought I didn't understand. Still, I stayed silent. That's what mothers do. We forgive before we're even asked. I always told myself, she's just busy, she'll come around. But deep inside, I could feel that she was slipping away, trading love for ambition and warmth for pride. The last time we sat together, she looked around the house and said, "Mom, why don't you sell this place? It's old, small, it doesn't suit you anymore." I smiled, but my heart cracked a little. Because she didn't see what I saw. She saw peeling paint. I saw her father's fingerprints on every wall. She saw an old couch. I saw the place where she took her first steps. She saw dust. I saw history. That's when I realized my daughter wasn't losing time. She was losing touch. But even then, I never thought she would cross the line between love and greed. Until that phone call came. The one that changed everything. It all began so gently. There was no warning, no thunder before the storm, just silence. The kind of silence that comes before something breaks forever. My daughter came to visit after what felt like an eternity. Her car stopped in front of the house I had kept shining for years. The same gate her little hands once painted blue with her father. When she stepped out, she looked different. Her hair, her clothes, even the way she held her phone. Everything screamed distance. She hugged me quickly, like someone checking a box they no longer cared about. And yet, for a moment, I let myself believe she was my little girl again, the one who used to run into my arms after school, smelling like rain and sunshine. She walked through the living room, running her fingers across the shelves filled with old photo frames. "Mom," she said with a half smile, "you still keep all this old stuff?" I smiled quietly. Those old things were the only pieces of my heart I had left. Each photograph was a moment, frozen in love. Each crack in the wall had a story behind it.
She didn't see it.
She didn't feel it. She was too busy measuring what could be sold instead of what could be remembered. Later that evening, as we sat down for tea, she began talking about how difficult life was in the city. The bills, the rent, the pressure. She said, "Mom, you shouldn't worry about managing this house anymore. Let me handle the property papers. You just rest." Her voice was soft, persuasive, loving. The kind of love that sounds real until you realize it's rehearsed. And I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe my daughter still cared. So, with trembling hands, I opened the old wooden drawer and took out the folder, the property documents, the land deed, and the memories tied to them. I held them for a moment, my fingers brushing the edges. I remembered the day my husband brought those papers home, smiling proudly, saying, "Now this place will always be ours." When I handed them to her, I felt like I was handing away a part of him. She took them quickly, too quickly, kissed my cheek, and said, "I'll take care of everything." That night, as I watched her drive away, I stood by the window, staring at the headlights fading into darkness. For the first time in years, I felt alone. A week later, I was staying with my sister in another town. My health had been fragile, and my daughter insisted I needed rest. She called often, but never for long. Always hurried, always distracted. Then one evening, my phone rang again. Her name flashed across the screen, and I smiled. For a second, I hoped she'd say something simple like, "I miss you, Mom." But her voice was bright, sharp, excited.
Mom.
"I have great news. The house, it's sold. The deal's done. You can finally move to a better place." Her words hit me like cold water. My smile froze. Sold? My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely hear her next words. I whispered, You sold the house?" She laughed, like it was no big deal. "Yes, Mom. Don't worry, I handled everything. You'll thank me later. That old place wasn't good for you anymore." I stared at the wall in front of me. That old place was where she took her first steps, where her father whispered stories to her every night, where I had cried when she left for college. It was not just a house. It was the only piece of us that still existed. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. Because what's the point of screaming at someone who's already deaf to your love? So I said softly, "All right, dear. Do what you must." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. It carried every unspoken word between a mother and a daughter who were no longer standing on the same side of love. After I hung up, I sat there, staring at the old clock ticking on the wall.
Tick. Tock.
Each second sounded like a goodbye. I looked around my sister's room. The floral curtains, the quiet lamp, the loneliness. Then I looked at my husband's old photograph beside my bed and whispered, "You were right, she's gone, isn't she?" My eyes burned, but no tears fell. Maybe because I had already cried all my tears long ago. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered again. "She thinks she sold our home, but she doesn't know. I was ready for this." Because deep down, I had known this day would come. The day love would be tested by greed. And that's why, weeks ago, I made sure the papers she held were nothing more than words. Just ink and lies. She thought she was clever. But soon she would learn what betrayal feels like, not through anger, but through truth. Days turned into weeks after that phone call. The kind of weeks that move slowly like time itself is afraid to touch you. Every morning I woke up before the sun rose, out of habit, not hope. I would make myself a cup of tea, the same way I used to when your father was alive. 2 spoons of sugar, just enough milk, and the same chipped cup he once said I should throw away. I never did. Some things, even when broken, still hold stories. I sat by the window every day, watching the light fall differently on the floorboards, and wondered if my daughter was happy, if she was sleeping well, if she even thought about me. But the silence between us grew wider. Her calls became shorter. Her laughter felt heavier, fake somehow, like she was trying to bury guilt beneath it. And then one evening, she called again. Her tone was different this time, shaky, nervous. "Mom," she said softly, I think I made a mistake." I didn't say anything. I just listened to the sound of her breathing on the other side. She said, "The man I sold the house to, he's not who I thought he was. He's planning to demolish it next week." Demolish it. The word echoed through me like thunder. For a second I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. Because she didn't know the papers she had signed were not real. She didn't know that weeks before she came home, I had already gone to my lawyer, an old friend of my husband, and changed everything. The real documents were locked away safely, under my name, while the copies, the ones she took, were nothing but ink on meaningless paper. I remember the day I made that decision. It was raining heavily outside. The sound of water hitting the roof felt like time reminding me of all the storms I had survived. And I told myself, if she ever lets greed guide her, I must be ready to protect not the house, but her soul. So when she took those papers, when she sold our home, I let her because I wanted her to see the truth about the world she was becoming a part of. I never hated her, not for a second, because hate is easy. But love sometimes demands silence and distance. The next morning I called her. I said, "It's all right, dear. Let him do what he must. Some things can be rebuilt." She sounded confused. "Mom, how can you be so calm?" I just smiled, because what he's about to destroy was never his to begin with. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her heart skip. "What do you mean?" she asked quietly. I took a deep breath and whispered, "You'll understand soon, my child. Sometimes we have to lose what we love to realize what it was worth." She didn't speak again. Only silence remained. But in that silence, I heard her tears. That night, I packed a small bag and returned home. When I reached the gate, the moonlight fell across the old paint, faded, chipped, but still there. Just like my love, still standing. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and the smell of the house wrapped around me. Old wood, dust, and memories. I walked into the living room, touched the same shelf she once used to reach for cookies, and whispered, "You'll come back here one day, and when you do, this house will still be waiting." And it did wait. 2 days later, she came running down the same road she once played on as a child. Tears were streaming down her face. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, but for the first time in years, she looked real. "Mom," she cried, running into my arms. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was helping. I thought I was doing the right thing." I held her tight, not because I forgave her, but because a mother's heart doesn't know how not to. I pulled her closer and whispered, "Shh, I know, my love. You didn't need to lose the house to understand its value. You just needed to lose yourself to find me again." She sobbed harder, burying her face in my shoulder. And for the first time in years, I felt the same warmth I'd missed for so long, the heartbeat of my daughter against mine. The next morning, she helped me sweep the floor, wash the dishes, hang the curtains. And while we worked, we didn't talk much. We didn't need to, because love had returned, quietly, humbly, like sunlight after a long storm. And as I watched her hum an old tune her father used to sing, I realized something powerful, that sometimes life doesn't destroy us to punish us. It breaks us just enough to rebuild us stronger than before. It's strange how time moves differently when the heart has been broken and mended again. It doesn't rush anymore. It just breathes. It's been many months since that night. The night she came back, crying in my arms, her words heavy with regret and fear. I still remember the way her hands shook when she said, "Mom, I've lost everything." But she hadn't lost everything. She had only lost what wasn't meant to stay. The lies, the pride, the illusions. What she found was me. And what I found again was her. The house feels alive again. Every wall, every creak, every photograph. They all seem to whisper the same thing. We survived. In the mornings, I wake before the sun. The world is quiet, that kind of silence that feels like peace, not loneliness. I walk into the kitchen, boil water, and make 2 cups of tea. One for me and one for her. I place hers beside the diary, his diary, the same one that started it all. Sometimes she joins me before I even call her. Barefoot, sleepy-eyed, but smiling. She sits down, her hands wrapped around the cup. And for a moment, I see the little girl she used to be. The one who thought her mother's love could fix everything. We don't speak much in those moments. We don't need to. Because silence, when shared with love, becomes language. There are days when I still hear her father's laughter echoing in this house. In the rhythm of the wind through the windows. In the soft clinking of cups. In the faint hum of an old song. I think he'd be proud. Not because we became perfect, but because we learned to be human again. One evening she asked me, "Mom, how did you know? How did you know the papers weren't real, that everything would somehow turn out right. I smiled and said, I didn't. I just trusted that love, true love, always finds a way back home. She looked at me quietly, her eyes soft. And for the first time in years, she called me Mama, the way she used to when she was a child. That single word carried more forgiveness than 1,000 apologies ever could. And when she said it, it felt like the universe itself exhaled, like the story that had been holding its breath for so long finally found its peace. Now, our days are simple. We cook together. We clean the porch. We plant flowers in the same garden her father once tended. She laughs more now, a genuine, unburdened laughter that fills every empty corner of this house. At night, she sits by the lamp with her notebook open. A new diary, her own story now. And while she writes, I knit. Or sometimes I just watch her, thinking how beautiful it is to see your child heal in front of your eyes. She's different now. Her eyes carry both youth and wisdom. Her words are softer, her heart stronger. She doesn't chase money anymore. She chases meaning. A few weeks ago, she came to me with the old diary, the one her grandmother once gave me, its pages yellowed, corners torn, but still smelling faintly of rose oil and thyme. She said, Mom, I want to keep this. I want to remember everything, even the pain. I smiled and said, good, because pain, my love, is not something to be forgotten. It's something to be learned from, so that love doesn't repeat the same mistakes. She hugged me then, long, tight, wordless, and I realized, for the first time in many years, that my arms weren't holding a daughter. They were holding peace. A few days later, we went to the beach. The same beach where her father once taught her how to fly kites. The air was colder now, the waves slower, but everything felt exactly the same. We sat quietly as the sun began to set, the sky painted in orange and gold, the light touching her face like a blessing. She said softly, Mom, do you think he can see us? I looked at the horizon and smiled. Of course. He's in every wave that reaches the shore, every wind that passes through our home, every heartbeat that still carries love. She leaned her head on my shoulder. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the most honest prayer. When we returned home that night, I watched her fall asleep in her old room, the same room that still had the faded wallpaper of stars she once picked when she was 8. I stood at the door for a while, watching her chest rise and fall, and I whispered quietly, Thank you, God, for bringing her back to me. Then I walked into my own room, sat beside the window, and opened the old diary one last time. The pages felt delicate under my fingertips, like holding time itself. I read the final entry, written by her father, dated 30 years ago. It said, If love ever gets lost, I hope it finds its way home through her. I closed the book and smiled through my tears. Because it had. Love found its way back, through mistakes, through distance, through silence, through time. And it didn't just return, it grew deeper. Now I write too. Not for others, but for her. Every night, I write little pieces of wisdom I've learned about forgiveness, patience, and the quiet strength of a mother's heart. I leave them on her bedside table before she wakes up. She reads them in the morning, smiles, and never says anything. But her eyes tell me she understands. I know my time is coming close. I can feel it, the gentle tug of life asking me to rest. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I know she'll be fine. One day, she'll tell her own daughter this story. Maybe she'll begin with the same words I once whispered into her little ears. Listen carefully, my child. Love isn't about keeping everything perfect. It's about keeping your heart open, even when the world tries to close it. And maybe when she says it, a part of me will still be there. In her smile, in her warmth, in the home we built not with bricks, but with forgiveness. Because this story was never about a house, or property, or loss. It was always about love. Love that faltered, stumbled, broke, and still came back stronger. And as the sun rises outside my window for another morning, I take a deep breath, smile softly,
and whisper to myself,
the house is still standing, the heart is still beating, and love has finally come home. They say homes can fall, memories can fade, and time can take everything away. But a mother's forgiveness, it never disappears. It lives quietly in the corners of every broken moment, waiting for love to find its way back. Because a mother's forgiveness is the only home that never fades, even when time forgets the address.